All right, full disclosure here, guys. Since I work with both of you, but I'm going to go ahead and yes, I have to like I feel like I have to say that like I do know you guys. Um, but just as a little bit way of introduction, Ian, you are at Research, or you're both at Research Triangle Park. Ian has been the assistant director and has been the director and head of drama at the Research Triangle High School for a while. And then John's been helping out and been the assistant director. He started 2017 assisting Ian with all of that, because I remember you coming on board with all of that. So both of you are involved in the current production, and that's kind of what I thought we would talk about a little bit about, and then also get a chance to show the video. And you're doing a very interesting presentation of Shakespeare's Henry V. So I thought maybe we would start with you, Ian. So I know you picked this, what, a year ago? So pre-pandemic, pre-coronavirus. I guess maybe sketch out a little bit about what were your thoughts about why you picked this play, and then where is it evolving to now? Does that,
Sure.
that make sense as a way to kind of start us out?
Absolutely. So the thing, we do a Shakespeare every year, because I think it's sort of the capstone for our junior and senior actors to dig into a text and really put their skills into practice. And many of our best shows, Tempest 4 years ago, are sort of legendary / infamous production of Macbeth that used GoPro cameras and live streams. Our beautiful production of Winter's Tale really are some of the things I'm proudest of. And so looking at this class as they were juniors last year, and they were going to be seniors this year, and our sophomores rising into juniors, I was thinking, what would be a play that could really challenge them both vocally in terms of the text, but also physically. We have amazing dancers, some wonderful kinetic and kinesthetic artists. So I was thinking, well, Henry V is basically just great speeches and great battle scenes. There's virtually no narrative there, because the narrative has already been done in Henry IV, parts 1 and 2. So I thought, well, this will be a real showpiece for us. And we have this incredible past student, Greg Parker, have to shout out to him, who is a blacksmith. He's at App State right now. So we hired him to make us 9 broadswords so we could actually do the battle scenes in the round. And so he worked so hard, and come Christmas break, he had 9 gorgeous broadswords made just for us, aircraft aluminum. They were fantastic. And so that was the initial idea with Henry V. We're doing all of our shows this year in the round. So we wanted this very immersive sense of people running in with swords, 2 feet away from you, and swinging around and speaking this text, and really immersing the audience into the very warlike, very kinetic world of Henry V. And then there was a virus, maybe you've noticed. And our initial thought was this: we can't do this. We were going to, cut down rehearsal and see if we could do it like in 3 weeks of actual time. And then it became very clear that there wasn't going to be any in-person rehearsal.
Right.
And our first thought was, okay, well, we'll cancel this, and that's what we did. And then John suggested, well, maybe there may be some ways of maintaining this. And Steve Goldberg, one of our other teachers at school, said, here's some other precedents for how this might exist. And it struck me that the very things that we chose this for, that it is a very spectacular play, that there's not much in terms of a linear plot, that it is full of incredible speeches and incredible set pieces, make it very easy to deconstruct, to pull apart and to recombine in a different way that serves our own purposes. Olivier did this, of course, with his film version of Henry V, which was made around the time of the Second World War, and reformed Henry V into this very nationalistic piece about how great England was and we ought to go fight and all those kind of things. And Branagh did the same thing in the 90s, where he took it apart and turned it into a piece really dealing with the horrors of war. It's that solid a piece. So we thought, well, what if we exploded it, if we took it apart and we used it as a canvas through which our students could reflect on and interpret and express their existence in this historical period as well.
So talk about a little bit about, you talked about deconstructing it and then the students are working to interpret. Give us an example of where the students really kind of pulled it out and sort of done something a little bit different, because I know just from the initial meetings, having sat in on them, you're letting the students do some of this formatting. So how are you getting them, or give us an example of how they're engaging this?
Sure. So there's two, I think, really striking examples here. And so deconstructed theater is what I sort of studied in grad school, which is to take a text, it has to be a good text, and so Shakespeare is one of the best, and to blow it apart and mine it and say, well, what if we did this bit and we did something different with this bit? And it gives us space for people to experiment and interpret, because we don't just have actors in our program at RTHS. We have astonishing playwrights. We have incredible dancers, incredible musicians and composers, and Mr. Wood can speak to this, a group of just absolutely first-rate videographers and editors. So the first thing we did was we said, okay, what are the skills you want to implement here? What are the things you want to do with this text? And we got several writers on board. And so we then blew apart the text after doing some text analysis. And a great example, there's a very famous scene where Catherine, Princess of France, is being taught English by her maid, Alice. And she keeps getting it wrong and saying these very dirty things, because it's Shakespeare, it's all very dirty things, right? And so, but the scene is in French, right? You can't do that scene without somehow making it apparent to the audience what's going on. But the idea of miscommunication, of a girl who has a crush saying the wrong thing, is still very much something we all experience. And so two of our young writers, Max Vincent and Emerson Brown, took that piece and reframed it as a conversation between Catherine and Alice via text on Zoom about internet slang. And instead of translating from the French, now we're translating from the internet, and terms like shade and tea and extra, all that become, and it's exactly structured the way Shakespeare's scene is structured. I mean, it's almost a one-to-one sort of thing. One of the other examples of how our students are taking this as their own, one of the elements we're really looking at is this idea of discussion, of students spending some time talking about Shakespeare, talking about their lives and seeing where those things intersect, and then handing it off to our editors, who are all students, to see how they can distill.
Did we lose Ian?
It seemed to have frozen.
Well, I can pick up where he was going for.
Yeah, I was just going to say, talk a little bit about that. We lost you for a minute, Ian.
Yeah, well, Wood was going to say just that. I think we actually have that clip if we want to share it.
Sure, I'll share the clip and then talk a little bit about the editing process after that.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I wanted you to talk about what is your challenge, because you guys are all in different spaces. Now, how are you guys all working this to edit and starting to put it back, taking all the pieces and putting it back together again?
Well, let me show this
Okay.
one of our beats, the video, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about the process of putting that all together. So let me see if my technology works. So cross your fingers. Let's see how this works.
In March of the year 2020, the students of Research Triangle High School were supposed to produce Shakespeare's Henry V.
Then the world fell apart.
The novel coronavirus that caused COVID-19 put the entire country, the entire world, into a virtual lockdown. I'm serious about that virtual part. The only contact we have with the outside world is through our video screens and cameras.
School was canceled, life was canceled, Henry V was canceled.
Except we decided to do it anyway.
How do you feel about what's going on in the world right now and where you are right now?
I hate it. This is great.
I think it's interesting that we're living in a time that is going to be written about in history books in the future. And like, we're living through a part of history that's not going to stop and it's going to be talked about for years and years after this.
This is never going to go away.
It's not just us, it's literally the entire world.
The opinions about certain things that we might have had before and our perspectives about life in general will change because of this.
We need to kind of like appreciate what we have while we have it.
We're going to cherish things a lot more. We're not going to take things for granted anymore.
And I feel like another thing that's also very interesting is just how different people react to this. Like some people are completely fine being by themselves for a few weeks, and other people are just like, I miss my friends. I feel like I'm all alone.
It just goes to show we don't always have the answer and we can't always fix things as fast as we'd like to.
I think an idea that I think is really kind of ironic is that we're all working together to be apart from one another.
Why are we doing this? Why on earth would you do a play at this time?
I think we're doing this because we plan to do it. Obviously, a lot of stuff got canceled, but this is one thing that we figured out how to work around. And I think that's really cool and special to this just like community.
Art has always been like a huge part of the human experience.
And we are actively making the type of art and the type of stuff that you'll see in history books.
We have the pandemic going on. I'm sitting on a bucket right now, and that's not particularly normal. Us being able to get together and do this is kind of showing that we can work through the weird space that we found ourselves in. And I think that's just a testament to how determined we are to produce a piece of theater, but also how we still want to be around each other and be with each other and learn theater together.
In March.
So yeah, the good thing about this whole process, and kudos to all of our student actors and student writers and student creators that have gone through and putting this together. But we got into, we're like, how in the world do we do this? I mean, because obviously we still have battle scars from Macbeth. And we're like, why are we doing this again? So we have, I've been over the archival filmings of all of the shows for the last couple of years. And I've had the privilege, absolute privilege, to work with some videographers and editors that have really grown with the program, grown with the more I throw at them, the better they get, it seems. And
Right.
So when Finley and I were talking about what are we going to do with this, and I think he put out a call for, it was during one of our first cast meetings, like, okay, we need to know all the things you can do. Can you sew? Can you act? Can you do all these things? And he asked for editors, and I'm like, I have some editors I can choose. And kudos out to Jess Barton and Mason Kaiser and Audrey Brown and Chase Cadman, Emma Carew. These guys are amazing. And some of the things that they're putting together, and really Finley and I have just given them the video. We record on Zoom calls and we would give them the video and say, this is the look we want. This is the music we want. Go for it, create. And I think Finley can talk to this as well. Some of them were like, some of the video is going to be laggy. Some of the video is going to be choppy. Some of the video is going to be frenetic. We're like, that's exactly what life is right now. We want it to be this, we don't want it to look perfect. We want it to be endemic of society, life. And I think that's one of the beauties of the text. The students that Ian put together in the writing is just phenomenal. And I can't begin to say how excited I am to watch these pieces being put together. And the fact that Finley and I have really encouraged and promoted these kids to do all the work for them, and then they're doing the creation. And that's another reason why, and I'll stop talking, another reason why I wanted this show to still happen, because this senior class is my senior class. This is the first class that I came in with the RTHS, and I've got a really strong emotional connection to them. And I really didn't want this show to be lost. And I think the fact, and by the way, it's Henry Video, V and Idio. I think that's wonderful how we're changing.
Oh, I thought that was brilliant.
And that was Steve Goldberg. Steve Goldberg came up with that.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, he was. I've got to give credit where credit is due. But the fact that these editors are taking these things, these pieces together to where we'll give them like 5 or 6 or 7 different versions of it. We don't get it right the first time. And me as an editor, I've always told my guys, if you think you got it right, film it 2 or 3 more times to make sure you have it. And we're just giving the editors these pieces, these puzzles, and they're putting them together, and it's phenomenal. And I cannot wait to see the finished product.
Right. It is kind of incredible how the kids, I'm a little bit in awe of how much you guys really do trust the students to come through. And they do. and probably even exceed expectations at times. And I think that says a lot to the foundation you have both established at the school with these students. And like you say, this group of seniors that's coming up, you've been working with them for 4 years, and that's kind of a unique situation. Ian, did you want to talk any more about some of the things about putting this together and some of those specific challenges that you're finding that's different from, well, obviously it's very different from producing a conventional show, but some of the other unique challenges that you're finding during this time?
Sure, and I think this speaks to, I think, a lot of stuff that have been going over on other Audio on Stage podcasts and other elements going out in the world right now, is that the typical forum for theater, the stage, is gone. We don't have it anymore, and we are still desperate to create theater because it is a necessary work of art. But the stage that we have is a very limited one. So the question always is, and this is true for all high school theater, how can we take our limitations and make them our strengths? How can we say this thing that we have to do because of necessity will become an essential part of the aesthetic and become something that we want to be focused on rather than sort of hidden off to the side. So the question has been throughout this, how can we make the limitations of this, the fact that we're doing it on Zoom, the fact that we're never in the same place at the same time, the fact that while we're trying to do this, there's all this other stuff happening in the world that's never happened before. How can we make that an integral part of the production rather than something we hope the audience doesn't notice? I was having a little conversation on Facebook with the brilliant Jeremy Fiebig of Sweet Tea Shakespeare, who is, I think, one of the best directors of Shakespeare in the state. I mean, he's just phenomenal. Kim, did you see his Lear a couple of years ago? Wasn't that astonishing?
That's Lear. I was like,
it completely changed my opinion of Lear.
Oh.
I had no patience for Lear, and then I saw that production. It's like, this is my favorite tragedy now. It was so
I was in
shame.
tears at the end. It's like, I know what happens. I know how this ends, and I'm in tears.
Yeah, sobbing, ugly cry.
Yes.
But he and I were going back and forth, and he was saying how much he disliked sort of Zoom theater. And it's like, that's a valid point, but it may well be that it's because people are trying to do theater the way they've often done it and just do it on Zoom, rather than saying, what are the limitations of this platform and how can those be used in the service of this? The best, I was talking with Wood about this just a moment ago, the best example of this, if any of you caught the Stephen Sondheim 90th birthday last night, which was riddled with technical problems at the start to begin with. But there was a sequence, and it's going to be legendary. People are going to be talking about this for years, that its very lo-fi quality is what made it great. And it was Meryl Streep, Christy Baranski, and Audra McDonald in bathrobes in their houses, singing Ladies Who Lunch, drinking scotch as they're doing it. It was fantastic. And it was incredibly lo-fi, not a shred of good lighting. But of course, that fits with the aesthetic of the song, right? This is a song about a woman on her last thread. She's on the rope, she's falling apart. And it uses the medium of Zoom to really show us just how fragmented she is. It's a great piece. It's a legendary piece where the medium is part of the message, which Sondheim would very much want to do. If you love theater, you have to read Sondheim's 2 books, Finishing the Hat and Look, I Made a Hat. They are 2 of the greatest books ever on the practice of theater.
Put those in the notes so that I can go back and read those.
Oh, I'll lend you my copies. They are beyond precious.
And one of the things, and kind of to tie on with that I've shared with my video production students, even though over the course of distance learning is how Saturday Night Live and some of the other, like the late night talk shows, have gone to that format to where you have the Zoom calls and the video conferencing, and that's how they're getting things done. And, you know, I think the way it fits into Henry V, you know, to quote Patton, war is hell. And I think it's not supposed to look pretty. Yeah. And I think the grittiness of Zoom and the lo-fi quality, I think really leads or lends a realistic view or a light onto this. And I think that's where that lo-fi really comes in handy.
Well, that's what Sondheim says.
Scripted stuff too.
Yeah, it's what Sondheim says in the book is form follows function. That is one of his 3 maxims for greatness. And if the form has to be Zoom, then we need to make sure that the function is lined up with that. So what sort of things can we do? And so our whole aesthetic has been fragmented and sharp and very edgy in that way, because that is an aesthetic that is going to match what is going to happen with the camera, right? With these, you know, losing the audio here and jumping over there. If the aesthetic itself is very rough and tumble and slightly apocalyptic in its own way, then that's going to be consistent with what we of a necessity have in terms of the filming and the putting together. One additional thing I will say, just in terms of challenges. So the best thing you can ever do is bite off more than you can chew. That's the only way you can, the Macbeth. I mean, it was the classic one. We can talk about that as well.
That's a different show.
But one of the things we really wanted to do is we wanted to have this choral piece written by past student Ethan Wood, who's this astonishing composer. He's composed many, many pieces for us. And there's a choral piece called for in the script, the Non Nobis Domine, after the Battle of Agincourt. And so he wrote for us this wonderful English anthem sort of piece. And we wanted to do sort of a online choir. You've seen online choirs, you see them on YouTube. How hard can it be? See, that's the thing, right? And so that has been a tremendous challenge in that we're trying to get everything lined up and recorded. And okay, you can't use Zoom for that, but what if we do this other thing? I think so often the only way anything good gets done is by saying, I'm going to do this thing before you know how hard it is.
Right.
And then you just have to either do it or fail. And if you fail, then you have learned something incredibly valuable. That is one of the educational precepts of RTHS, is this, the fancy term is growth mindset, as you well know. And all it means is an understanding that failure is not something to be avoided. Failure is a necessary part of the creative practice. If you avoid failure, you're avoiding genius. The only way to get something brilliant is to fail many, many times. It's not like there's a way to get genius and avoid failure. It's not like, oh, if I'm really lucky, I won't go through that. No, there is one door into the room of genius, and it has failure on neon signs all over it.
What was it that was it Edison that said, how many times did I discover how to do a light bulb? It says not that, it's how many times I failed at it.
Yeah. And having watched some of the rehearsal processes, you give the students a lot of room to explore their characters and go after it. And sometimes they'll go in some really odd directions and you kind of let them, and then you'll see them come back at another and go, that just doesn't work. It's like, you let them figure out that it doesn't work, but you let them have that opportunity in a very safe space to work through some of the failed attempts without feeling bad about it. And then when they hit it, it's like, it's breathtaking. At least it was for me, watching them move the process of that.
Well, that comes directly. I wish I could say that was my own. It is absolutely not. It comes directly from what I think is maybe the best book on the practice of theater. It's called A Sense of Direction by William Ball, and it's a little of its time, right? You read it, and it's like there is this sort of built-in misogyny, just the way he phrases certain things. But if you can get through that, what he's saying is astonishing. And what he says is that the director's job is just to get out of the way of the actor and let them, their natural genius shine through. No one wants to make a bad decision. No one wants to do a bad performance. It is our own limitations that get in our way. So as a director, if you give people sufficient scaffolding and sufficient space, in theory, that should release those fears and allow their brilliance to show through. You can't rush it because you can only get to the great ideas having gone through the bad ideas first. One of the things that often frustrates me are students who want to get it right the first time, because they'll get it right, but it will never be great. The only way to get to something that is truly great is by floundering and failing. Maybe the proudest moment, I was thinking about this last night, the proudest moment of my work as a director at RTHS was a production of Carol Churchill's plays, A Number, that we did last year. Yeah. This is as hard a play as they get.
It is.
This is graduate college level, layers upon layers of work. 3 characters. It's meant to be done by 2 characters. Actually, it's 4 characters, meant to be done by 2 actors. We did it with 4 actors to allow to spread that around. But each character having to use this incredibly cryptic text to discover and reveal character and make that clear to the audience. And the great Kirby Callan played the main part in that. And initially, the first few weeks, stumbling all over, trying to figure out, who is this character? Is he funny? Is he serious? And if you had just come into those first rehearsals, you would have thought, he's never going to figure it out. It's impossible. But those very nail-biting rehearsals at the beginning were necessary to give him the space to find and perfect, which he did, the character of Salter. And it was one of the great performances I think we've ever had.
And to top that off, we were I wouldn't say crazy enough to be doing 2 plays at the exact same time. We had Bernarda Alba going on at the same time as Number. And when you were tracking out Bernarda Alba, I was in there running language and running dovetailing with the Number. And I can agree and kind of echo what Ian's saying. That first week of going through the text, and we had a freshman, we had Nico Rogers, had never been in a play with us before, and just basically tell me how to say it. And I'm like, I can't do that. And we're just watching them discover and make those choices and commit to those choices. And by the time we got done, I'm with Ian. I'm watching it. I'm in tears, going, this is brilliant theater, and they came up with it on their own.
Well, and for me, I thought it was a very interesting casting Kirby in that title role, because I've always thought of him as very much of a comedic actor. And, here he comes, and that role is like, it's a heavy, heavy role, and you got to dig deep to find that motivation and how this guy operates. And he did it.
And you can even tie that with what we're going through now. I mean, some of Henry V, some of these speeches and some of these poignant ballads are just heavy. And the fact that they're doing them from the comfort of their own homes and not with the ability to run through some of these, I guess, situations with us. And some of the choices they're making are just incredibly astute. And wow, I wouldn't looked at it that way. And one of the students was coming through that we have Zoom calls we record, and then we have other pieces that are recorded on their own, and they send to us to the editors to edit. And why don't we record it using this type of a clothing? And I think Finley and I were like, let's try that. And it's interesting and it's wonderful at the same time. Now, granted, do students have some really crappy ideas sometimes? Sure, but so do we. So I mean, we're not immune to those. But I think the safe space that the Black Box Theater provides is that they have the ability to make a choice and commit to it. And if it doesn't work, let's try something else.
Yeah. If I could circle back even a little bit more to Henry V, how have the students expressed how they're connecting what's happening now with the Shakespeare and the text, specifically because Shakespeare is very inaccessible to a lot of people, and I know Ian, one of your goals is to make it very accessible to the students. So I'm wondering, how are they doing that now because now they can't be in the room with you and like chitter chattering about it, but yet but I'm wondering, so how are they making the connections and how are you helping them to do that?
So we were so fortunate. The timing was so precious on this. The great Carmen Maria Mandley, who is the Director of Education at Tennessee Shakespeare. Any theater person here in the Triangle probably knows her name because she did theater here and theater education here for years upon years. And before traveling around, Portland stage up in Maine, now at Tennessee Shakes. Her training was at Shakespeare and Company, but she is as good as they get. She is one of the great Shakespeare educators in this country. And we were lucky to have her come down and do a workshop with us on Henry V. It was supposed to be during our rehearsal process, but then it turned out that her schedule made it better for her to do it a little bit earlier than that. So thank God, because we were able to come down. She worked with us 2 weeks before everything closed down. So we had this foundation in the text, this foundation of embodying the text that she gave to us, so that when we were started to work online, we had already had a physical embodied experience of the text led by one of the greats in the country when it comes to that. So that was our foundation.
And it was done in such a layman's terms to where even a Shakespeare rookie could come in here and like, oh, that's what that meant. It was very unassuming, very non-threatening, and it was like Shakespeare is not scary. And I think some of our students really took that to heart, and you could see it in some of the decisions that they're making at home.
I did wonder how familiar some of the students were with the text of Henry V and you know, Shakespeare in general. I mean, I know some of the students, some of the seniors are a little more veteran, but then I know there's a lot of other students that are kind of new to the process because, you know, there's this whole crew of students that have come up that are like, woohoo, I want to do something.
Absolutely. So that's one of the things that, again, I'm really proud of in our program is that we do Shakespeare every year. We do verse every year. And it is not sort of a sideways thing that we kind of do and we try to skim over because we actually do it twice a year. We have the final production of each year is a Shakespeare production, but then mid-year we also are part of the English Speaking Union Shakespeare competition, which every sophomore, junior, and senior drama student participates in. And we then, you know, compete at the branch level. For several years, I actually ran that competition. I do not believe in competition myself in the arts. I don't think it really fits. But the ESU Shakespeare competition is special, I think, because it really gets students excited about Shakespeare. So we do quite a lot of Shakespeare throughout the year. So those who are sophomores and juniors and seniors coming to Henry V, though they were not familiar with Henry V itself, because it's not part of any of the curriculum in drama or in English. They were very well familiar with the tools that you use to unlock Shakespeare. When you understand things like thesis and antithesis, you know, how lists work, how onomatopoeia and bare vowels work, when you understand those rhetorical tools Shakespeare uses, the language falls open in front of you. And they have, through all of their training, they had those tools. So we could, you know, today we recorded the wooing scene between Henry and Catherine with a couple of juniors, Sky Simmons and Calvin Austin. And we basically had to do no work. They knew, okay, this is the way this works. This is the way this punctuation has to be read. This is the way this vowel has to be used. So once you have your Shakespeare toolkit, you can use it on any text. When it comes to the freshmen in the cast, and we have some wonderful freshmen in the cast, the general theory that we have is trial by fire, right? You just jump off the edge of the cliff and the people ahead of you know what they're doing, and you look up to them. It's like, well, they know what they're doing. I better do my best here. And it becomes the upper grades becoming the teachers of the lower grades. That was the great realization I had the fourth year our school has been around. Our school has been open. This is the end of our 8th year. And the first, I would say 2 years, certainly, really the first 3 years, was a bit of a struggle. It really was, because we didn't have upperclassmen. You know, our very first year, it was all freshmen. It was all freshmen. Think of that for a moment. The school of nothing but freshmen. But then the fourth year, I will always remember this. A young woman named Elena Podleski, and we were doing a series of radio plays. And they were radio plays because I didn't want to have students memorize huge chunks of text that I want, because we had limited resources. So I figured I'll make it easy. We'll do these radio plays. And she had she was doing The Witch in Neil Gaiman's Snow Glass Apples, which is just phenomenal. Huge chunks of text. Didn't have to be memorized. Could have been script in hand. Within the first week, she was completely memorized, because she knew that that was what would make her performance great. Smooth as glass, completely memorized. And as soon as she did that, everyone else saw that. All the underclassmen saw this. Like, oh, that's what I'm supposed to be. That one act on Elena's part set up my theater program for the next 3 years. And of course, those people who were freshmen at the time, in that class, the freshmen were people like Diane Gildehouse and Catherine Leonard, who would go on to be the people setting that example for the others. So what I found is that if you get your upperclassmen the skills, the confidence, the presence to be that, they will set it up for the underclassmen much better than I ever could. I could never motivate someone as an underclassman to go to that sort of work, but they'll do it.
But what you do there, both you and John do, is you set up the environment and this structure of being supportive. There's no divas. We're going to support each other, and we're all going to try, and we're going to work. And everybody just sort of rises to that challenge. They all, you know, oh, they're doing that. Well, I should like up my game. And it's not in a competitive way, but in a, this makes us all look good. If I'm doing my part, you're doing your part. And it's a real, I don't know, everything just kind of keeps fitting together,
Well, that's one of the things that, and I'll let Ian speak to this, one of the things that kind of drew me to the program is that, you know, I acted in college, you know, after college, and, you know, a lot of times, you know, education is nothing but show business anyway. So my acting, you know, has come in handy. But one of the things about the program is that we stress professionalism, and how this isn't just high school theater. This might as well be a professional theater. And that's how it's run. That's how it's, we expect people to do their jobs, and we hold people accountable. And one of the things that I really like about the program is that, you know, from the top person to the bottom person, they're equals, and crew is almost just as important, if not more important, than the cast. And as a whole, it's just, you speak to that. It's all about the professionalism and the end product.
Well, I think that is the, you know, on one hand, we can say this, we've tried to create a supportive atmosphere in the theater, which is absolutely true. But it's a dangerous phrase, right? I am not a touchy-feely type person. It's dangerous to say, you know, I want to support everyone, because if that's your goal, if your goal is supporting everyone, then you end up making very fuzzy, ill-defined theater. And similarly, on the other hand, if all you say is, all I want to do is make the best show possible, you end up creating monsters, right? You end up creating maybe beautiful shows, but the people involved with them become divas, become obsessed with competition and all that. But there's a middle way. There's a very clear path between Scylla and Charybdis here. And that is the pursuit of the ideal of professionalism. Because if that's your goal, if your goal is to approach the creation of art as a professional, then you get both of them. Because a professional intrinsically, inherently has to support everyone around them, has to put their work forward and put the ensemble forward. And therefore you create an authentically supportive community, rather than just, oh, it's all kumbaya and that sort of thing. Because if your goal is just the community, there's going to be some Mordred in there. There's going to be some, sour Sally in there who just wants to screw it up. Whereas if the goal is professionalism, then the ensemble, which is the canvas of professionalism, becomes supported. And intrinsically, the work that you create is also going to be of a high caliber, because that's what professionalism creates. One thing to keep in mind, I think it's so important about our program, is that RTHS is technically a STEM school: science, technology, engineering, and math. But functionally, we are a STEAM school. I don't think we call it that because it seems a little touchy-feely to call things that. Because there's nothing in STEM that conflicts with the arts. In fact, they go together. The ideal of professionalism is as necessary in engineering and math as it is in the theater. Very few of the students I've ever taught in my career, I've been teaching for 20 years now, which baffles me. Very, very few of my students have gone on to act professionally or to write plays professionally. But I do think that what they've gotten from work in the theater is still valid, even if it's nothing to do with their career in a direct way like that, because this is the crucible of professionalism. And I cannot imagine a profession where professionalism is not important.
No, and I think that's something that you had taught them. I mean, one of the big words you also use a lot to the students is commit to your choices. And that's that whole idea of that professionalism: commit to your choices, make that commitment. And I think, yes, I think that, especially for students, I think that's such an important life lesson.
One thing I will say, kind of tying everything back into Henry V, is that this idea of professionalism. And I think question you asked a few minutes ago is like, why are we still doing it? How are we still doing this thing? Right. And how are they handling it at home? And I've heard probably every rehearsal that I've been in that, because we reinforce at the end of the rehearsal, like, what's one good thing to happen today? And these kids are like, rehearsal gives me life. This world is falling, on fire around me. And this hour of my day makes me feel connected and a part of something. And I think that as teachers, I think Ian can agree with me here. I hope I can speak for you in this, that our goal is to better our students and to give our students that creative outlet and that creative energy to be able to create art and to be a part of something and to give them purpose. And in the process of this production, I think we've been doing that, because even teachers have been searching for, I don't see my kids every day. I don't have, routine. I don't have order. I don't have what am I doing here? And I think that the work we're doing, yes, this is, like Ian said, we've bitten off more than we can chew, but we're still chewing, we're still hanging in. And I think our students are better for it. And I think our discussions, we have these beats called discussions. We talk about, and like you saw in the video, where we just ask a question, and these brilliant children will begin just riffing on these ideas. And I'm just sitting here going, this is gold. This is absolute theatrical gold that we would not have gotten had we not been in this situation. And another thing, I think the absence of a stage, absence of stage lights might make Shakespeare a little more accessible. If you're at home with your little Snuggie and your stuffed animal and, mom walking through, then on a stage with harsh, fill lights and music pumping through speakers. I mean, maybe that just popped in my head. It might make it more accessible. What do you think, Ian?
So, I mean, that's one of the touchstones that we've thought about in terms of our productions is the American Shakespeare Center up in Stanton, Virginia. We saw just a life-changing production of Much Ado About Nothing there. And then they worked with us to allow us to stream their production of Henry IV Parts 1 and 2 for our cast so they could get context on Henry V. But they have a reconstruction of the Blackfriars Theater there, and they use something called the universal lighting. That is to say, the audience and the stage is all under the same light, is exactly as it would have been in Shakespeare's time. And this doesn't seem like a big deal, right? It may even seem to those of you who are lighting designers in the audience, a bit of anathema to use that, to lose that powerful tool of light. But the great thing about universal lighting is that it forces the audience to be part of the world of the play. And that is how Shakespeare is meant to be done. There is an immediacy between the character and the audience that helps the audience through the obstacle of the language. And so I think that some of the very intimacy of using Zoom, of using, literally handheld video this far away as the medium for this production may perhaps serve that same function that universal lighting does at Blackfriars, to create the intimacy between character and audience that Shakespeare always intended you to have.
Right.
The idea of Shakespeare on the grand stage playing in front of velvet chairs, Shakespeare wouldn't have known what to do with that. That's not how he was writing. His text is a very difficult text, is a very complicated and convoluted text to great effect, but the engine that animates that text, that gets all of those complicated gears locking together and moving and creating something powerful, is the energy between the character and the audience. Not even the actor and the audience, the character himself knows the audience is there. So Richard III is not just conspiring with himself, he's conspiring with the audience, right? When you're watching it, you're not watching an actor playing Richard, you're watching Richard talking to you. And to a very specific point in Henry V, when Henry does that incredible St. Crispin's Day speech, right? And he is speaking to his troops and trying to rouse them. We in the audience are his troops. He is not speaking to other actors on stage so much as he is speaking to us in the audience under the same light and therefore in the same world. We become his very army. And so we're trying to do some technical things with this to give us at least a little sense of that through the lens of Zoom and video and that sort of thing.
Because I came up with that because I've acted in Hamlet twice. It's the only Shakespeare I've ever done on stage. I was Horatio in both times. And just being on stage in that type of a format, I was a freshman in college, and it was almost paralyzing to think when you're on stage, I'm doing Shakespeare in front of thousands of people, versus I would have preferred to do it this way. Like it's the universal lighting. I'm at home. I can put whatever costumes I want. I can put my own face makeup. It's just me. And it'll almost allows more to do that, that's choices. You commit to those choices instead of, I have to do it the way I'm told to do it because I'm on stage in this itchy wool costume. And, that's the way it's supposed to be. That's why I kind of thought that Zoom might actually make it more accessible. And I think that's a brilliant bring in about the universal lighting of Staunton that I hate. I missed it. But I did see the video stream, and I do think that will play. And I think our students are really running with their own commitment and their characters. And one thing to talk about characters on stage, this was funny, talking about Finley and I learning how to do technology on the fly. We're trying to record the St. Crispin's Day speech, and we're trying to keep our Henry V in the center of the screen in the Zoom window. And we're like, how do you move the windows around? And I'm trying to do Google searches on how to move it. And then we finally get at this time, Isabel Van, we finally get Henry V in the middle, and then someone drops off and then she shifts. And we're like, what's happening? We don't know what's going on. But we took the names, our Zoom names, and changed it to character names. So that way, wherever they are, that main character, then you know that that's the character you are. So it's kind of like necessity is the mother of invention.
Right.
Descartes was an amazing mind when he came up with that. I was like, yeah, we're doing things on the fly, but it's working.
It's sort of like you're taking the technological challenges and just incorporating them, and they become a strength of the show.
Right. That's that following function. Hopefully, certainly.
Hopefully.
Talk a little bit about now, as you're moving towards the final production, how are you going to put it out for people to watch? I'm assuming it's going to go out on is going to go as a Zoom meeting, as a watch party? How are you going to start streaming that, or YouTube? For somebody who's a little bit not into technology, I was kind of confused as to how that will then go out so that the public can watch it.
Sure. So the piece that we're creating will be, we've been filming bits and pieces of it variously, and the editors have putting it together. So the piece that we'll be creating will be about a 45 minutes, 50-minute video that we will then use YouTube as the hosting platform for. Simply because, you know, Research Triangle High School, a lot of our instructional material is on YouTube. All my lecture content is on YouTube.
Right.
And therefore, it's a platform that we know very well. And the other nice thing about the platform is that that then allows us to share it in whatever social media platform we want pretty readily, because YouTube integrates so well with whatever social media platform we're on. Because certainly Mr. Wood and I, we're Facebook people, certainly, but our students are not. Our students are TikTok and Instagram and all of these other social media things, but they all have ways to bootstrap onto YouTube. So that will be sort of where it will be. So when the show opens on the 6th of May, so Wednesday of next week, that link will be sent out very broadly. It will go out via the RTHS Facebook and Twitter accounts. It will go out via our various students' social media accounts. And then we're going to be doing some fun things as well, because as you know, if you've done film, you have to get it filmed, and then the editors have to do their work. So there's this lag time where the actors aren't doing a thing, as the editors are, you know, sweating blood to try and get it finished. And to some degree, we've overlapped those, so it's not a huge time. But one of the things we have planned for the end of this week, start of next week, in rehearsal, as the editors are working, is to take some stuff and then to social media-ize it, you know, find what is the 12-second TikTok clip that we want to play with, what is the imagery that we want to pull and play around with this, and to try to use social media, because that is one of the canvases of our time, as another space to explore Henry V. You know, Henry V's story, in so much as it is, it's a coming of age story, certainly, although by Henry V, he's sort of come of age, so it's just a bit of a victory lap. But it is a story about communication. Henry V is full of maybe the greatest speeches Shakespeare ever wrote. And they are all about getting an idea across and getting someone to do something, getting an army to run into battle, getting someone to stand down from battle, convincing someone to fall in love with you. And so it is a play about communication in that way. And given that social media is, especially now as we're locked in our rooms, is about communication, it seems reasonable to play around with how can social media be not just an advertising platform, but an additional space to explore the themes of the play.
And it'll also be it'll go out, the YouTube channel that it'll be hosted on will be the RTHS Digital Media Lab YouTube channel. That's where we do a lot of our archive filming, and that's where we as a theater department keep that housed. But it'll be coming from the RTHS Digital Media Lab YouTube channel.
It just seems like it's so interesting to me, because, you know, RTHS is just so uniquely positioned, because you had this strong drama department anyway, and then John, you brought this really strong digital media and all of the stuff that you've been working with the students over the last several years with the digital media and all of that kind of stuff that you've put together. So you had these people like in place, like they were just, I mean, as much as this is a crisis and it's chaotic and all this other stuff, you had the people to actually kind of deal with it and to work with all of these pieces.
Well, the beautiful thing about it is that we as an art department really focus a lot on personal aesthetic and people finding their own voice. And like I share a little of the stuff I've done in music and video. You know, Ian's talked about some of the things he's done, but I try not to show a lot of my work, because I want kids to take what I teach them or show them and develop their own path. And over the course about this, I mean, I remember Finley and I talking in February, going, man, we're going to have to cancel this play. We have to cancel. We can't, you know, we're not going to be in person. And I remember chopping the, I mean, we had to get rid of our playwriting festival and our 48-hour film festival, and things were falling around, you know, in leaps and bounds. And then we started thinking, okay, well, let's take a week away here. We'll be back. We'll have time. And then at the end, when we got to the point about we're going to cancel this, you know, I sat on it for a little bit, and they're like, wait a minute, why? And we started, you know, and I promised Finley through this whole process there would not be a GoPro anywhere involved in the production. That's why we have Nightmares from Macbeth. But I think that's the beauty of having an advanced high school like we have. Exactly. Is that we have people from so many different backgrounds, and people are, I mean, every single piece of music in this piece was composed by a student. Every piece of video will have been either recorded or edited by a student, voiced by a student, mostly written by a student. And we at the high schools I've come from, that would be difficult to do. And I'm lucky, privileged, honored to be a part of a program like RTHS and the drama program here, just because we have some of the most amazing creatives I've ever worked with. And these guys are high schoolers. I mean, some of our freshmen are just brilliant.
Yeah, no, they are. But also I think you guys deserve some credit for allowing or creating an environment that fosters that creativity, that encourages them to do those kinds of things. Because I don't think that happens in a lot of places, in a lot of high schools that I can think of. My daughters went to a public high school, which shall not be named, and I don't think that kind of creativity in their drama department existed. There's probably little bits of it, but that's a big thing. And to give that much responsibility over to the students, the fact that you're allowing them to create the music, the discussion element, rewrite that scene. I just think that I read the scene of where, you know, Alice teaching Catherine how to, you know, I was just dying. I was like, this is brilliant. This is really smart. You know?
One of the things I will have to say, and I'm gonna give Finley the credit here for this one, is that, you know, having worked at a couple of different high schools, I mean, collaboration happens within the drama, within the actors side of it. But the beautiful thing about the RTHS drama program is that Finley's willing to collaborate with other pieces and parts, and allowing the video and the music and some of the other exteriors to be brought into a program only makes the program stronger and has wider purchase. So I'm gonna give Finley a little bit of credit for that.
Well, and I think also the fact that you guys were willing to understand that this was going to be kind of messy, and yet it works. You know, it works for the theme of the play and what you're trying to convey, and how Henry V connects to what's happening.
I think it would be useful here, because we've referenced it so many times.
Yes.
To talk a little bit about the production of Macbeth from 3 years ago.
We have to.
We do. Because I think it is a very good exemplar of the sort of thing we're talking about. We were approached because the crazy ideas, also the brilliant ideas, are never Wood's and mine. They come from the students. Last year, there was this insane idea in our production of Cinderella to literally raise the floor to the ceiling. That came from Catherine Leonard. Every sort of great idea has come from our students. And so with Macbeth, Duncan McGregor, genius videographer, completely unhinged, said, well, what if we were to put GoPros on the cast, and the live,
literally on the cast,
their perspective to video screens upstage, so that as the audience was watching the play, they were also seeing through the eyes of the characters on these screens upstage. It's a wonderful idea, because so much of Macbeth is about perception, seeing through the eyes of the characters. And it meant that all of the illusions, for example, we see in Macbeth. No one else sees blood on Lady Macbeth's hands, but she certainly does. No one else sees a ghost at the banquet table, but Macbeth certainly does. So by seeing through their eyes on screen, we were able to do all those illusions digitally. And for example, the Ghost of Banquo, we had filmed earlier on and composited into the live video so that there is no ghost on stage, but if you're looking through the big video screen upstage, you're seeing Banquo's ghost composited in there. It was a living nightmare. Duncan is, oh, it's easy. It'll be so easy. So that was a lie. It was trying to get 5 GoPros to talk to 5 screens live, plus these composited things, plus all these other digital images and other video pieces, and getting them to run with a live piece of theater, not composited and edited together like the footage we're doing now, but a real live show with all these digital pieces was just ridiculous. It was entirely too much. We bitten off more than we could chew.
We literally had television screens hanging from the backdrop on the back of the stage. My classroom, which is next door, which is usually serves as the green room or the backstage, was turned into a television production studio. I had tables and screens and people, and it was, the actual finished product was amazing. Mm-hmm. But to Finley's point, it was, if I had hair, I would have lost it during that. And I wasn't even really the assistant director of that particular show. I was more collateral damage, kind of like, hey, can I help? And it was just, I guess form follows function, I guess, is another good example of that, is that the actual end result was wonderful. I guess the end did justify the means of us losing our hair and getting, ulcers at the end.
And I think that was the thing, is that we had to just jump in and know that we were going to fail. And there were moments that did fail within that, of course. There were moments that it just couldn't be done. But once the failure was cleared away, the thing that was left over was a really astonishing production. Certainly one of the most visually interesting and thematically powerful pieces I've worked on. But we had to be willing to fail hugely there. So having done that, something like this Henry V becomes easier. We've already failed. We've already screwed up. We've already misused technology as much as you possibly can with Shakespeare. If the people from the Folger Shakespeare Library were going to come and shut us down, they would have done that already after what we did to Macbeth. And yet it turned out well, and that gives us a great deal of freedom.
I enjoyed it. So what's on your bucket list for, where do you see possibly, I know you're thinking of some shows for the summer, but how about next year? Where's your bucket list? What are you headed towards next year?
So there's some very interesting possibilities. The first is we're doing our first summer stock show. We've graduated some amazing theater creators who've come back to us and said, we want to do a show. And the hardest thing when doing a show is getting a space. Well, we have a black box theater that's empty in the summer. So Chapin Reel and Austin Stack, 2 of the most brilliant young men I've worked with, are going to be producing and directing Much Ado About Nothing this summer, which will be open to audition from our students and alumni as well. Our goal is to actually have that be a live performance. And so they're coming up with how can we rehearse something largely online, and then maybe if we can be together in a room come July, put it together there. What if our audience is only 20 people and they're 6 or 10 feet apart, and they've been coming up with how do we do real live theater in the time of COVID. So that's what we're looking for at the summer. Next season, who knows, because who knows what school is going to be.
Right.
I know our goal in terms of the shows that we were planning on is a show I've wanted to do since I was an undergrad, called The Ladies Not for Burning. It is by Christopher Fry. It is an incredibly funny, incredibly uplifting piece, and it's verse. It is written in 1945, 1947, something like that, but like Shakespeare, it's in verse. And it's about English town, mid-1600s, and there's this brilliant independent young woman, Janet Jordemaine, and they want to burn her at stake for being a witch. She's not a witch, she just has a brain. Meanwhile, this guy shows up, and he's a soldier, he's sick of the world, and he wants them to kill him. He wants them to hang him because he is done with the world. So the town wants to burn this innocent woman, and there's this guy showing up who wants to be killed, and he says, whatever she did, I did it. I'm the devil. Just hang me now, please. And of course, by the end of it, both of them have come to an understanding of humanity and each other, and it's this wonderful change of the community. It's a uplifting and hilarious play.
The radio drama version of it is just amazing.
Yeah, so that's our hope for the fall if we get together. We've secured the rights for A Gentleman's Guide to Love and Murder for the musical.
Cool.
We love our
like that.
Yeah, we love ourselves some farce. One of our favorite shows we've ever done was Lend Me a Tenor. And this
that was fabulous.
This, like Lend Me a Tenor, it's a big door slammer of a farce where you have this guy murdering his way through this family, and all the members of the family are played by the same actor. And luckily we have several actors who are talented enough and sort of comic ninjas enough to pull off that multi-character portrayal. So those are the two big shows we're looking at next year, and then we'll see what the other variables are as we move back into a world, hopefully, where we can get together in a room and turn off the lights and do some theater again.
And we'll also have the musical review where we, students come in and sing some Broadway songs. Mm-hmm. Can never go wrong with that.
No, you can't go wrong with that. And I mean, that would also, if you had to do something still streaming, I guess you still could possibly pull that off and put that all together. I used to run the Hamiltons group here in town, where we used to get together on stage and sing Hamilton songs. There have been some virtual, they call them virtual nonstops, where people are getting together and like one person will play the song, and then everybody on screen will just be singing the song. So you get 55, 60 people on a screen singing the same song from Hamilton. Hey, it's not bad. Yeah. It's always hard to do that.
Not throwing away my shot.
There you go. That's it. I think we're about ready to wrap it up. I think we've covered a lot of the stuff. We've definitely talked a lot about Henry V. I can't wait to see the final production. I just think it's going to be so much fun to watch.
Our students are having a great time putting it together.
Yeah, it looks like it.
It sounds like it's going to be awesome. And thank goodness we have educators like you guys who just kind of embrace this weird technology that we're living through right now and just run with it.
I'm just following Finley's lead.
The one thing I will say is that all across North Carolina, theater teachers of all stripes are doing precisely the same things. Teachers are a powerful and malleable and flexible group of people. And so if you look at the North Carolina Theater Arts Educators group on Facebook, you will see every day theater teachers from all over the state just doing shockingly brilliant things. Shows that they couldn't do well, we'll do these scenes up here. If you look at what Coco Thornton over at Enloe, they were about to premiere the high school production of Wonderland, the musical. And they weren't able to. We closed just as they were heading into Final Tech, and so they found other ways of getting that material onto the internet. Huge shout out to all of the theater teachers throughout North Carolina who I see their work, and I am just humbled by it.
I did wonder,
honored to be a part of that whole group.
Are we going to get to see Greg's swords at all?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, yes.
Absolutely.
Oh, good.
one of the high points, again, this is entirely a student generated piece, as we were talking about, well, how do we do sword fights? How do we do these fights we were looking forward to in Henry V? And there's various different editing tricks, but someone said, well, what if we did a social distancing sword fight where the swords couldn't be within 6 feet of each other? And so Sky Simmons scripted this hysterical fight where they're fighting, but the swords are 6 feet apart. And at one point their swords touch and they both drop their swords and they cover their hands with hand sanitizer, and then they pick them back up and start fighting again.
It's absolutely hysterical.
That's
yeah, you'll get to see the swords, most definitely.
That's gonna be fabulous.
Well, this was such a great conversation. Thank you, Kim, for hosting. I may have to rope you into doing some more of these.
These guys made it easy. So thank you, gentlemen, for making my life easy. It was a pleasure to have this conversation with them.
Thank you for having us.
And I'm going to shamelessly plug what's coming tomorrow night. I'm very excited to host Andrea from Coloring Broadway. If you guys aren't following Coloring Broadway on social media, you need to be, because she makes these extraordinary coloring pages. If you are an adult who loves Broadway, who likes to color, they're extraordinary. I just started working on one, so hopefully I'll have it done by tomorrow. But she's a special person and really believes that coloring is therapeutic, and has melded her love of Broadway and therapy. Coloring is kind of meditative therapy into a business, and it's very exciting to see. So she'll be on with me at 4 p.m. That one's on Instagram Live, so you're going to have to pop over there. And the second event we have tomorrow night is at 8 o'clock. Ariane Mobasher is interviewing. You know who she's you know who he's interviewing, Ian. You're smiling.
Yep.
Ariane is interviewing Lachlan Watson. And
Yep.
I am so excited to hear what they have to say about their career, their Carolina roots, and truly their extraordinary, not just acting career, but modeling career. I mean, they're just doing some incredible things right now.
So I taught Lachlan when they were in middle school. They did the Summer Theater Conservatory at STC Junior at Burning Coal one summer. And there are those people that you encounter in your career. It's like, oh, well, that's the real thing, right? And as soon as you meet them, it's like, oh, well, yeah, of course you'll have a career. That's just the way it is. I worked with Lachlan. It's like, okay, I'll just get out of your way while you go off and be brilliant, because that's usually the best thing when someone has that much of a head of steam under them.
Well, I'm excited to hear what they have to say. I don't know them, and so Ariane does, and I'm excited to hear that interview, and looking forward a little bit towards Wednesday. I don't even know what day of the week it is, guys.
Wasn't Lachlan and Sabrina, the Teenage Witch?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
One of their last roles. Wonderful.
Yes. And one of the first non-binary performers to really be out and a role model in this way. So that's why it's so extraordinary. They're going to be on tomorrow.
Yeah, because that's how I discovered them. So I was like, wow.
Yeah, cool,
Amazing.
right? And then Wednesday, Joanna Maynard Edwards from Women's Theater Festival is going to be interviewing Audrey Cephaly. And how cool would it be if she wins the Pulitzer Prize this week and we have her on? So just keep your fingers crossed. Maybe we'll have a Pulitzer Prize, a newly Pulitzer Prize winning playwright.
Right on to that.
RDU on stage.
You said right on.
Right on, right? And then Wednesday afternoon, I've got Jonathan Burke, and he was in Choir Boy and The Inheritance. The Inheritance has just been nominated for some Drama Desk Awards. So I'm excited to talk to him about both those plays. Those are extraordinary works of theater, and what a career. He's a really young person too, so it'll be nice to chat with him. So we've got some cool stuff happening. Follow us on social media to find out more. All the events stuff is on Facebook. You can find out the details. Thanks, Kim. I can't wait to get back to the theater. I know you feel the same.
But it's neat seeing all the creative things that are coming out of these times, though.
Henry V's released May 6th, so get ready for it.
So Ian, will there be a link for people to watch it?
Yep, absolutely. We'll make sure that you get that. It'll be all over Facebook and Instagram and that sort of thing. Since the distribution of it is one of the things we're playing around with the full cast. We'll make sure that you get that link. So if you want to send it out to the You on Stage family, they can see that as well.
That's May 6th.
Absolutely, we will. And Ian, you know, I hate to ask this because you've got your hands full with Henry V, but are you writing during this time? Are you doing any playwriting? Because you are one of our seminal playwrights in this area.
So, as it turns out, I'm working on 3 things right now, which I did not anticipate. Thanks to Marshall Botvinnik and Bulldog Theater in Durham. They just did a reading of my play, and there was War in Heaven. We did it on Zoom. It was fantastic, and it was one of those revelatory. I've been sitting on that play for years now because I knew it was broken, didn't know how to fix it. Had a reading, it's like, oh, it's perfectly clear what the problem is. So I'm now working on revising that. And then working with Tamara Kassane, our wonderful Piedmont laureate. You know Tamara very well. She and my dear friend Alan Mall and I are scheming a scheme. We are making some audio drama. I actually was working on my episode for that today, and it's just so much fun. It's just such a delight. I don't want to give anything away right now on this one, but once we get this one done, it's gonna be a treat. It really will. And then I'm writing for the Senior Arts Lab at Research Triangle High School. We're doing this project wherein the students, this is their final project, are making a piece based on the pandemic, then sending that piece to a different artist in the class who will make a piece based on that, sending that to a different artist, making a piece based on that. So we are praying with this idea of how can we still create in a collaborative way, in a multi-artists, cross-disciplinary way, where we're each creating in our own box. So this round robin process is part of that. And Ms. Warren, our incredible visual arts teacher, Mr. Wood, and I were all creating pieces to be part of that cycle. And so I was writing a piece in response to the pandemic for exactly that. So I'm working on 3 scripts right now of various different sizes.
Now, is your piece going to be a video project, or is it just going to be the?
No, this one, it's what I settled on is a actual script, because I got a thought. It's like, this needs to be on paper.
Because I'm doing a podcast at the same time, so
Yeah.
mine's going to be a radio piece.
Yeah.
So yay! Hence the microphone, right?
John, you know, it's kind of cool. We're going back to the old radio days with the old radio dramas, audio dramas. I love that, right?
Yeah, I actually got Finley and some of our actors last year to record 4 of those radio dramas for the radio station at school. And I know that there's been an explosion of podcast creation over the last month or so. And it's amazing to hear all the crime dramas and the true life dramas and the real, my podcasting queue is like over full, because I'm not going to be able to hear all of these things. And so me being a radio guy, I mean, most of my work has been television or radio, and it's great to hear the recurrence and the resurgence of the podcasting and the radio style dramas, because it's just making this old man happy.
And shout out to Tamara. She is really on the cusp of this in this area. She's just brilliant, a brilliant creator, and just the warmest, kindest human being on the planet.
And you should ask her about the guy who DJ'd her wedding.
Ooh,
I DJ'd her wedding reception a long time ago. So that's how I ran into her a long time ago. So I know Tamara well.
She's amazing. Well, thank you guys, and thank you, Kim, for giving me a night off. That was kind of, I mean, I was here though, so I wasn't really had a night off, but I enjoyed just being an audience member for these. They're very cool. So thank you guys. And I will see everyone tomorrow night or tomorrow afternoon at 4 for Coloring Broadway, and tomorrow night at 8 with Lachlan. Thanks guys. Stay safe, stay healthy.
Bye. Thanks for having us.
See you soon. Hopefully.